안녕하세요, Nami입니다. Hi, it's Nami. Today I wanted to sit down and talk to you about something that many had questions about and something that's also a very large, huge part of my life that I haven't really sat down and talked about. But first, before we get into the contents of the video, I do want to make two disclaimers. Number one, excuse my foundation if it is looking any blotchy. It is because of this guy right here. And then secondly, I've only vaguely thought about what I want to speak to you about, but haven't planned anything, so please forgive me, please be patient with me. I am not very articulate, you know, I'm not Michael. So if I do have some trouble talking, then please excuse me. So the title of this video is about my abuse, and also mainly my mother's abuse, which I don't want to speak too much in detail about, and I guess our experience coming out of that. So I was born in Korea. My mother was a victim to domestic violence from my biological father, who was her second husband. From my memory, I remember that she was very scared. Of course she would be scared. Of course anyone under that situation would be scared. She would hide before he would come home because she was scared. I don't want to call him my father because he isn't. He never was. So let's call him Person. So Person would drink and come home drunk, and it is Korean culture to drink a lot. I think due to the war and past war history, there's a lot of trauma from war violence and war crimes. So the whole nation, I think, has adopted a drinking culture, a heavily drinking culture, which is unhealthy, and I do see that as unhealthy. Yes, drinking can become something that you bond over. Sometimes it is very social, and it is something that is necessary to facilitate social interaction. But if people are drinking every day, like 3 bottles of alcohol a night, coming home drunk at like way past midnight, they're not attending to their families, they're not having healthy relationships, I think there's a problem. That's my opinion about that little aspect of Korean culture. There are amazing aspects to Korean culture, but I think that's one of Korea's downfalls. I think they really need to get out of alcoholism. But that's besides the point. He would come home drunk. He would be very physically violent. My mom did say that it started from when she became pregnant with me. He wasn't like that before, and psychologists do say that signs of abuse do start to come out in the first pregnancy. So when she was pregnant with me, I think that's when he started to become more physically abusive. He would just have these rage outbursts, especially when he was drunk. Afterwards he would say, oh, I'm sorry, and like, I won't do that, and blah blah blah. Same thing as, you know, you hear it all the time. So she would hide sometimes, and sometimes she would just pretend she's asleep. She would just not be very happy. Actually, how could she be happy? Also, please, if you are in this situation, if you are a victim of domestic violence, please do your best to try to get out of that situation. Very difficult, but seek support from people around you and do your best to try to get out of that situation. If it's crime, it's crime. You just have to sometimes just call the authorities, speak to a lawyer. I don't know, it's tough. It's tough. You just have to do what you gotta do, what's best for you and what's best for your family. If you have a family, it's probably best for them not to be around someone who is not well like that. Try to seek help. If it's something that the perpetrator would like to work through, definitely go see counseling, go speak to somebody, and please do your best. I have this vivid memory. I think that it is definitely skewed to my child brain, but I remember her hiding in the fridge, which is wrong. She wasn't hiding in the fridge. She told me later that she was hiding in the closet, and I guess my child brain kind of confused the closet and the fridge as the same thing. I was only around Galahad's age, so she would hide in the fridge. I mean, not the fridge, the closet. I don't remember too much because I was very young, but there was a lot of, you know, physical violence. Bones, lots of bruising, yelling and screaming, things being thrown all the time. I remember one time, this is my first time talking about this. Gosh, I didn't think I was gonna be emotional, but this is my first time talking about it, and I don't know. Sorry, excuse me. My makeup's gonna be like dead by the end of this. There was one time when she and person were fighting. I was standing probably close to her and he threw a plate or a dish at her, but it hit me instead of her. And so now I have this indent in my forehead. I don't know if you can see it right there. Right here where the dish had hit me. And I guess it damaged some muscles or like some nerves that prevents that area from being flexed when I lift my eyebrows. There were instances like that and other instances with like violence, just violence. He had made death threats like, if you do this, if you do that, then I'll kill you. And my mother, she just, hello, obviously she felt like she needed to take me out of that situation. We just needed to leave. She got some help from her church members and from, I think, person's sister. I think she like knew what was going on. She wanted to help us. I can't be sure. I don't remember the details and I haven't really spoken to my mother about the details of our departure. But my mom packed one suitcase, a little backpack, my little backpack, and she brought $100 in cash. That's all we had. Sorry, I'm just thinking about how hard it must have been for her. We came to Canada with refugee status. My makeup. Because he had made death threats, and we stayed with the Torontonian branch of my mother's church in Korea. The pastor had helped us a lot, and gosh, actually he actually passed away last year, and I wasn't able to make it to his funeral because of the kids. But so many people have helped us and so many people cared for us, and knowing how much God loves us just makes me so emotional. And my mom did have like medical papers and documents supporting the fact that she was victim of domestic violence. I think at the time when we came here I was 4 years old, about to turn 5 in about like a couple months. I do remember the plane ride. I remember looking out the window, and I don't know why, I'm just talking about a plane ride. I remember looking out the window and I saw like the Arctic Ocean and blue, green, aqua sea. There were glaciers and ice floaty things. My mom later said that all I did was, my mom later said that all I did was look out the window, and I didn't even ask her where we're going. I didn't ask her what's gonna happen. I didn't ask her anything. I think at the time I knew like something was going on. I just trusted my mom, because even though kids are young, we think that they don't know. They do know, and they are affected by everything that happens around them. So I think at the time I probably knew something was going on. And I forgot to mention as well, my mom, after she had me, I think she stayed home with me for like 6 months or so. She had to put me into a daycare in Korea. And daycares in Korea are very different than the ones in the Western world. They're called 어린이집s, which means like a house for like children or little kids. They aren't very heavily regulated. I think now they are, because there are lots of incidents and cases of child death that are coming up now that have happened like decades ago. So I think now Korea is being more uptight about their, you know, childcare system. But back then it was very Korean. I do remember that some of the teachers were very scary, and my mom did tell me that the first thing that I said, the first thing that I spoke, I was a very quiet child. All I did was cry. I would sit outside her salon. Our house was above her salon, so I would sit outside and like cry for 3 hours straight. No one could ask me what's wrong. No one like could get me to say anything. I would just cry, just sit there and cry. My mom did say that every time she had to hand me over to the daycare, I would cry. Like even if I was sleeping, I would just suddenly feel her let go of me and I would cry. So now she has some sort of like trauma to babies crying. It really affects her and really disturbs her, because it triggers all of the emotions that she felt while she was undergoing this abuse. And yes, going back to me, my mom said I was very quiet. I never really talked. I never did anything except cry. The first thing that I said to her, in my own words, was, "Mom, the teacher held my shoulders and threw me into a dark room." And I must have said something like, kind of like figuratively, because I didn't know how to express myself properly. I probably said something like, "Oh, she took me up." I do remember crying a lot at the daycare as well. And one funny memory is I was doing some craft and something wasn't working, so I started crying, and I kept crying and crying and crying, and I was chewing gum. I think they gave me gum, and I was chewing gum and I was crying and crying and crying. And in Korea, the more you chew gum, the softer it gets and the more like sticky and like soft it gets. In America and with like Western gum, the more you chew, the harder it gets and it like solidifies. So while I was crying, I was chewing this gum and it was getting so sticky, and I just remember it like pouring out of my mouth and like stringing out because it was just so like slimy after I'm like chewing it for such a long time and also crying at the same time. So anyway, we came to Canada on a plane and we stayed at the pastor's house for about 3 days, and then we stayed at another person's house who I think the pastor knew, I think maybe for a couple days as well. And then we got an apartment, and then we stayed there for about a few years, and we moved uptown to where my mom got her own small space within a salon. During that time we were living in that apartment, my mom was working under a salon. I don't know if I'm making sense, which means a lot of her pay and all of her tip would go to the salon, and so she found a better place to work uptown where she could have her own room and her own chair and just do business like that. So we moved uptown and I lost all my friends. You know how moving is. And then while we were living at the second apartment, my mother's former mother-in-law, my mother's first husband's mom, and also the grandma of my sister and brother passed away. And my mother's first husband called her and let my mom know that his mother had passed away. She was on the phone. I remember this memory vividly. I was in like grade 4 or 5. She was holding onto the refrigerator door because she was in the kitchen at the time she got the phone call. She was holding the phone and she was like on the floor holding the refrigerator door, like sobbing, like weeping, because she felt so thankful towards my sister and brother's grandma, and I guess there was a lot of things that she couldn't say to her. She was very thankful towards her, but also very sorry because she actually got married a similar time that I did, but it wasn't from her own will. She even had my brother the same time that I had Galahad, so you can imagine how young she was. Once my mom left that house, my siblings were basically raised by their grandma because also their father went to a different country to work as well. I guess it was very hard on him having his wife leave like that. When my mom heard the news that her former mother-in-law had passed away, lots of feels going on. I think at that point they started to talk again, my mother and her first husband. I don't know how it happened, but he ended up coming to Canada and they remarried. They also signed papers for my adoption, so my stepfather now is also the father of my half siblings, which is my sister and brother who live in Korea. My brother is 20 years older than me and my sister is 19 years older than me, so my mom had me really late, but she had them very early. My stepfather, he also adopted me, so he's also my adoptive father. I'm really grateful that he was able to come and that their relationship was able is able to be in the process of remending again. But it's still, you know, it's still a process. It's still hard for all of us. Actually, he was really friendly towards me, and he really tried to be a father towards me, especially when he first came, but I thought it was really invasive and weird, and I was only in grade 5. He would come and say like, "Oh, how was your day? Like, how are you? And like, what did you do?" But he would be like this close to my face, and I didn't like that. Obviously, I was raised in Canada. We have personal space here that Koreans don't have. I thought it was weird, and I thought that it was uncomfortable. He's a man that I didn't know, and I remember speaking to him on the phone before he came, and I would tell him, "Oh, please come to Canada quickly and blah blah blah, like while my mother was talking to him. But he did try his best from his own perception. I think something that he should have done is look at this culture. Like, there's a huge cultural disparity between Korea and the Western world, and I think he should have really studied the Western world and seen how things work and how children respond to certain interactions, because he didn't do that at all. And he tried to interact with me how Koreans would, and I wasn't Korean. I came when I was 4. I was raised in a Western culture. Even though my mother had Korean culture, she was working every single day for 11 hours a work day, and she basically didn't raise me. I was with babysitters, I was with schools. He should have researched on Western culture. But eventually it came to a point where we didn't really talk because I just ignored him all the time. I thought he was really invasive and he made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't know how to react because I never had a father. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I think it was hard for him and it was hard for me. And to this day, he still has never referred to me as his daughter or introduced me to anyone as his daughter. I don't know. I think it's really hard, especially for him, because imagine if your wife left you and then she got remarried, had a child, and then now you have to raise that child. It's really hard, especially when that child never had a father and doesn't know how that child is also shutting down every effort that you're putting to try to interact with this child or make it feel loved or cared for. I think it was hard for everyone. I'm really thankful now that our family is getting better. I'm really thankful for my family, for Michael, who has been such a huge gift from God. I don't know where I'd be if God never placed him in my life. I would probably not be here because I was very suicidal. I had a lot of issues. I really thank my mom for always praying for me and my future family, always diligently working with what she had, trying her best even though people at church are gossiping about her or ostracizing her and bullying her. Like, are you high school? Like, children, why are you bullying someone at church? Especially when you're like 40 or 50 years old. Like I don't understand. Ugh, so annoying. I hate people like that in Korean churches, because especially in the West, church becomes something that Korean people come to as a social event. They don't have any other like Korean community, so people who don't actually even want to be at church are at church and like toxifying the whole environment, which is really dumb. I think that should not happen, but anyway. Yeah, and like working her butt off every single day for like hours. One thing that she does regret is not taking advantage of social benefits that, especially Canada provides for people who are in need. She also regrets that she didn't study full-time. She wishes that if she could go back in time, she would study full-time. She would stay home with me. The government would have been able to provide for her tuition and also my childcare if needed be. I'm really thankful for, all of the organizations who had supported us and helped us as well. There's a Korean Canadian Women's Association that my mom used to go to a lot, which provided lots of social services for us. We used to also eat from the Salvation Army. I remember having like cans and cereals in our house, which were provided for by Salvation Army and other non-for-profit organizations that really help people in need. I'm very thankful to those organizations, but I think I'm ultimately thankful to God for letting everything happen in my life the way that it did, so that he can really grow me and teach me lots of different things that I would have never learned if things were a different way. I'm thankful for our family now, because now I have siblings and I grew up alone and I always wanted siblings, but now that our family has become what it's become, I'm able to see my sister and my brother and have adult conversation with them, and I won't be alone. I'm really thankful that I'm not alone anymore. I have all of my family and my friends who love and support me and who I love. I also have my church family, who's been a huge pivotal, a rock and a foundation for my growth and training as well. And all of you, my fam, Nacho fam, has been really amazing to me, sharing your stories, sharing your struggles, sharing you know, your life with us. That's such a huge support, and we really can't thank you enough for all the love you've been pouring out to us. Gosh, I'm so emotional. I just love you so much. Things are definitely a lot different now, and if I could go back and change everything that's happened, I think that I wouldn't. I'm also thankful for all the hard times, all of the terrible times, all of the bullying and all of the abuse even. I think that I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for that, and I wouldn't have been able to meet Michael if it weren't for that, and I wouldn't have been able to start this beautiful family with these kids that I love if it weren't for that. Gosh, why am I still crying? Thank you so much for watching. I love you. I thank you so much for being here with me and living life together with me. I hope that we can continue to grow and learn together. Why? If you feel that this could be helpful to any way for anyone that you know, definitely feel free to share it. Thank you for deciding to be part of our Nacho fam. I do want to encourage you to turn on the bell notifications so that you'll be notified for new videos, or else you won't be able to see them at all. I do also post on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat, so you can check those out if those are platforms that you use. And I love you a lot. I love you. I can't speak about how much I care for you and desire for you to grow and become the people that you are meant to become. I think of you every day, and I do pray for you, so just know that I love you, I care for you, and we'll see you next time. Today's featured comment is from Hannah Tan. Your sons are so well behaved and lovely when they speak.
You can just sit down in this chair.
Okay, thank you.
Mommy?
Yes?
Can you just get off this chair? I give you this chair.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Hannah. I think the most important part is treating them as humans as well, and speaking to them as you want them to be speaking to others. One of my biggest fears is that the trauma that I had to go through and the trauma that my mother had to go through will rub off on my children if sometimes the way I react comes out to them. You're welcome. I really don't want them to grow up with emotional problems like we have to, but I think in life it happens. People are people, and life is life. There's always gonna be ups and downs and craziness that happens. By the way, did you see my eyeliner throughout the whole video? That was so ridiculous. We do want to keep getting better and keep trying. He's totally toddling right now. What a cutie. And we hope that you can continue to work hard as well. We'll see you next time. Also, quick shout out to 4th Round Squad. You know who you are. Who stayed for 4 hours of my live stream on Instagram. Love you.